Good morning and welcome back to our studio here in Tysons, Virginia. I'm Seth Behrens-White, and we're back for our weekly discussion on the COVID crisis and how to tee up best practices for small businesses. We are here this morning with a great panel and a great conversation, and we look forward to chatting with you and answering your questions live here on Facebook. I'd like to introduce my law partner, Declan Leonard. Declan, good morning.
Good morning, Seth. It's great to be here again on a Friday, and great to have a special guest here. I know you're going to introduce Ian now.
Absolutely. I would like to now introduce our special guest, Ian Altman. Ian is the founder of Same Side Selling Academy and is a nationally known speaker and author, talking to businesses here and throughout the world on business and revenue growth. Ian, welcome to the show.
Seth and Declan, thanks for having me here.
You bet. This is great. So another historic week here in Washington. Looks like we are going to start to be turning the corner from a medical standpoint, but what we're here to talk about today is from the business perspective. So let's just jump right in with a focus on small business. And I'll just throw this first question out to each of you. Declan, what have you been seeing this week? We've reached the end of another difficult and trying week here in Washington. They've launched a Paycheck Protection Program. There was a controversial moment in the Senate yesterday afternoon where it looked like they wouldn't be able to provide additional funding. In the meantime, business continues to move. What are you seeing out there on the front lines?
Yes, the Paycheck Protection Program, PPP, as we all call it now, is just front and center in small business minds, all the executives. And again, this is not money that's just going to be pumped into companies for them to do whatever they want to save up for a rainy day. This is money that is directly earmarked, most of it, to cover, like it says, paychecks. And so everybody is focused on it. I've talked the last 2 weeks about how the government has been a good partner of the private sector. I hope I don't eat my words because as of right now, most of our clients are saying, hey, look, we've signed up or we've had trouble signing up, but most of them probably have been able to get with their banking partners and signed up. Now what? It's kind of crickets. Let's hope today there's some kind of a development today where they can have it. But anyways, it's all sort of the PPP. We're looking at payroll to payroll. So the next payroll, April 15th, and most of those payrolls have to be funded a few days beforehand. So between today and Monday, I hope the politicians and the banks recognize this is a pivotal time.
Yeah, great point. Payroll day is Monday, so it's right around the corner. Ian, let's go to you. What are you seeing on the front lines in terms of what your customers are facing, and what are some challenges that they're facing as they're trying to move forward through this crisis?
Well, it's an interesting thing. There are really two different dynamics that you see. One is those businesses who have been really devastated because they can't work. So I've got clients and organizations I've worked with who are in the event production business. Well, events aren't happening. So they're just kind of trying to hunker down, figure out how to contain their resources. On the other side, and this is a really fascinating dynamic, is there are companies who really, they're in business sectors that are thriving right now. And so we often focus on the negatives. It's kind of like when we see all the statistics on COVID, we talk about the number of deaths, but rarely does anyone report on the number of recoveries. There are businesses who are absolutely thriving right now, and some who are actually investing in areas we just don't see it reported that often.
Well, that's a great point, and I think that really leads into an important theme that I'd really like to leap into right now and to go to both of you. Let's face it, the program that we're looking at in the $350 billion Paycheck Protection Program, when it gets going, it'll be great. But right now it's a hot mess. A lot of people are feeling that they're out in the cold. They have very little information. They're operating in the dark. I think that companies are really going to be also having to focus on how are they going to be able to be self-sufficient over the next 30 days as we get over the hump. Declan, what are you seeing and what are your general thoughts in terms of how companies can be self-sufficient and lean forward through this crisis, assuming that Congress is going to provide little, if any, help directly?
Well, let's hope that's not the case. But assuming that that's the case in the short run, at least, Seth, it's a good question. I mean, companies, what I'm seeing, they've had to become creative. They've had to look to areas that they've never really had to look to before, such as, government assistance in this. They've had to grapple with, do I keep my employees on or do I move them over to the unemployment ranks? The unemployment ranks, as we've talked about in the last two of these Facebook live sessions, has become what we call it the supercharge program, because really what it is geared towards is putting roughly, and I'm going to be very rough with my numbers here, but almost $1,000 per week in people's pockets. In Virginia in particular, we cap out at $385, but the feds are putting $600 in on top of that. And so you get close to $1,000. And the thought behind it is the average American throughout the country, the average salary is roughly around $50,000. And so what they're trying to do is they're trying to get to that level. So companies are trying to be creative and make hard decisions. And I've advised them personally, they have to look at unemployment as a viable temporary solution.
Ian, from a revenue and sales standpoint, what's your perspective on that? You were talking about some companies that are actually leaning forward through this crisis and finding a way to survive and thrive. What are you seeing out there, and what are your suggestions in terms of being self-sufficient and really just leaning forward and making it happen on your own?
Well, Seth, there are a couple things that people need to do. The first thing is you need to evaluate the situation that your clients are in. So obviously, you know your situation, how your business is being impacted. You have to really consider what's my client situation right now. If my primary market is people who are really devastated, I can't be the person trying to sell, metaphorically, drapes to someone whose house is on fire. We're just not going to capture their attention. But there are certain areas, certain businesses, for example, people in the wealth management and financial planning space, it used to be 6 months ago, no one would give them a call back because everyone's portfolios were going up month after month, quarter after quarter, and so they didn't want to hear from somebody new. Now, those people, if they have the right message, they can attract and have those initial conversations with potential clients. I have clients I work with who are in the agriculture business. They sell into farming. Those places are booming. Transportation, it's booming right now. So part of what you have to look at is, what do you sell? What kind of problems do you solve for those industries? If you're right now selling a solution to an industry that's been devastated, you might want to see, well, who else has that same type of problem? Can I pivot my business and offer solutions to a different industry that is doing well, and in turn will help your business do well?
And Ian, I would add one additional industry to that that we're seeing a little bit of an uptick on is tenant representation. I mean, as people are looking at their space, taking a second look at their space, looking at their building where they're located in, their team is now teleworking. You know, they're starting to look at different issues when it comes to that space. And we are seeing an uptick in tenant representation in terms of contacts, people out there in the marketplace reaching out to tenants and saying, hey, do you have needs that you have to pivot towards in this coronavirus crisis?
That's a great point, Declan. And you think about it, there are certain industries where people have had just great stuff and they're selling to a certain market. Now that market is devastated. So let's say somebody's selling AV equipment and gear and cameras and microphones and switchers and all that. And historically, they've sold that to event production companies and studios. Well, now you have a whole bunch of people working from home. And there are certain businesses who say, you know what, it doesn't look right when my employees are talking to other people. It doesn't look professional. I need to raise the level of that. So all of a sudden, even though you used to sell into a certain market, you may now pivot and say, you know what, here's a way that we can have it so that when your people are working from home, it looks and sounds professional. So you don't look like you're just like, oh, here's this person's cat running around in the background.
Yeah.
So Ian, let me just ask you a quick question, and I'll prompt this out of you, if you don't mind. Just taking a look at it from the Same Side Selling Academy perspective, what are some of the tips that you usually try to give from a staff sales management perspective in terms of being able to stay professional? Because these are people that aren't used to being able to sell from their basement, but yet they've got to be able to keep the company on track. No revenues, no deals. So where do you go with that?
Well, and keep in mind that we often say, well, now I can't meet with people. But the reality is that I can't meet with people in person face to face, but I can certainly meet with people in person over video. And we've gotten to be much better about that type of interaction. So just in the last few weeks, people have gotten more comfortable. There were people who a month ago said, oh, I never do video. I hate it. I won't do it. You can't make me do it.
Good luck.
I will not eat green eggs and ham. I'd say my ham. There's no way I'm doing it. And now all of a sudden, people have gotten much better at it. And in fact, one of the things I did is I talk about in these times, it's critical to be helpful not opportunistic. And in that context, we actually create a course in the Same Side Selling Academy called Growth in Crisis. And it's entirely free, because it would have been kind of hypocritical if I said be helpful, not opportunistic, and then charge for a class on how to do that. And so it's 3 parts. And the third part of it is tips on how to interact on video with your clients. And it deals with how do you set up your own environment and how do you guide your client through it? Because though you may be getting comfortable with that type of interaction, your clients may not. And that's something that we really need to look at.
So,
and
Declan, go
can
ahead,
I add to that?
Yeah.
I think one interesting development of many more workforces working from home, teleworking and stuff, is the formality when you're on these video calls. You always want to maintain professionalism, but I think a certain level of formality has been relaxed a little bit in the pretense. You know, there's always the joke about the dog barking in the background, and you know, once that happens, that is like the death knell. It's like, oh no, everybody knows. Now it's actually something that you're
moment
like,
of levity.
Yeah, we do our morning call. Our law firm does our morning call, and we kept hearing birds chirping. And one of our attorneys was taking the call. He's got 3 young kids. He was taking the call out back, and you could hear birds chirping. You know what? To me, I think everyone needs to get some fresh air during this crazy time of quarantining. And so that was, to me, like a great thing. It wasn't like in any way coming across as unprofessional.
Well, and Declan, one of the points that we make in this lesson, in this course, is this notion of when you know things like that are going to happen, it's just a matter of pre-addressing that. Meaning, if you say, look, and I just want to let you know that hopefully my children aren't going to interrupt me. They're 5 and 7. I'm working at home just like you might be. Hopefully they're going to be entertained long enough during our call to not disrupt us. If they do, I apologize in advance. That way, if the dog barks, if the kids run in, you've already got a pass.
Yeah. We've got that blur function now that we're all learning about, where you can blur your background. You know what? I don't like it, and I'm fine with it. We have one of our lawyers who is working right now from his home office, and he's a guitarist, or at least he thinks he is, right, David? But he's got a
You're going to be dealing with him when he comes in next time, not me.
Right. But he's got a poster behind him of Kiss the band, you know? And it's kind of like, you know what? We're starting to see people show a little bit of personality. And you know what? I think clients like that. I think they like working with people who are sort of letting the curtain down a little bit, you know, and you're still providing good services, the same good, trusted advice.
Right.
So.
And Ian, we're all under stress. I mean, I'm sure you're coming across the same thing. Yeah.
You know what? And one of the things is that there are a couple other videos that I reference in this program that I've seen from other people. They do a masterful job on how people can more effectively communicate via video. And one of them talks about the position of the camera. And think about how many times you've had a video conference lately where you have a really good perspective on the ceiling lighting in someone's home because they got their laptop in front of them, the screen is tilted up, and so now they're actually seeing the lighting up above. And one of the tips is, look, even if you got to put it on a trash can, put your laptop up at face height so it's right at you. That little bit makes a huge difference. And if you're in the business of communicating right now as, let's say, someone in a sales or executive role, invest in a proper microphone, because it's something that really makes a big difference. If your video is okay, but your audio is fantastic, people will give you a pass. You can have the best video in the world, but if they can't hear you, you're going to lose people.
That's a great point. What I'd like to do now is I'd like to introduce our engineer and the captain of the ship, Todd Castleberry. Todd, good morning.
Top of the morning, gentlemen, and we have some questions rolling in, and excellent. I think there's one that ties right into this discussion, and this is from Jill. How can our small business manage and oversee our staff on a reliable basis, even though they are spread out over various states and unable to move under stay-at-home orders?
Declan, what are your thoughts on that from an HR standpoint?
Yeah, I mean, I think, companies, there are 2 types of companies. Companies that already were well set up for all of this teleworking. And frankly, in the D.C. region with a lot of government contractors dominating the workplace, they've already been used to really having a very small headquarters and most of their employees either working teleworking or working, on the government site. So I think they're already used to being in a separate physical space. So I don't think it's a big issue for a lot of our clients that we're seeing. I mean, in fact, I'll give you one anecdote. We do employment training a lot for companies where we talk to their management staff, and we had one set up for this week with one of our clients. And we thought for sure this is probably going to get pushed because of the coronavirus, and we'd be doing this at a separate time. And they said, nope, we are going to go forward with it. We did it yesterday, 2 days ago, and it really went off fine. And we did it by video, and it went off as planned. So for those companies that are able to maintain business as usual, I think that's what they're striving for right now.
You raise an interesting point that I'd like to ask, and from Ian's standpoint, people on the sales teams are usually pushed to get out on Front Street and get things going. But now that people are home, from an organizational and from a strategic standpoint, is there anything that can be done with this time from a unique strategy perspective, in terms of sales, to try to help get your team aligned?
Yeah, what it comes down to is, first you got to prioritize. So you got to focus on the clients you can help the most. And part of that is identifying what problems are you really good in solving in today's context. Part of what you have to figure out is, whatever it is you're selling, is it going to be one of the top 3 priorities for whoever you're talking to today? And if it isn't, guess what? They're not giving you the time of day right now. I was speaking to a client of mine recently. They said, well, we reached out to these potential clients, but they just don't seem to want to do anything right now. They're focused on other stuff. I said, yeah, well, guess what? Their business is being devastated right now. They're focused on PPP. That's not your ideal target client today. So all you can be with those people is empathetic and say, look, I know this is a struggle. Here are some resources I can point you to. How else can I help you? But otherwise, not much else that really we can do for those people. Instead, we have to say is, here are the types of businesses we can help the most. These are the ones who would identify this type of help as one of their top 3 priorities, because if they don't do it, it's going to be devastating. And then here's an interesting twist. They have to convince us that it's important enough to solve to make it worth our time to help them solve it, especially now, because if they're not bought in to that solution, if they're not bought into the need to solve this, then as soon as someone else in the organization says, well, maybe we should wait, they're going to say, yeah, good point. But if they say, wow, this is really important, no, we can't wait, and here's why, then we can make some progress.
You're so right, Ian. The word I use is relevant. I mean, I've seen a couple of emails that have come across, where people are touting a webinar, or touting, we're doing this or we're doing that. And most of that has been, in my opinion, very much so responsive to the current crisis. Every once in a while, though, I see one where it's like talking about like some issue, some legal issue or some other issue that I would consider a luxury at this time. We don't need to be talking about that. Let's table that. Let's get through this crisis.
And on that note, before we get back to Todd on the next question, let's drill a little bit into the GovCon space. From an HR standpoint, there's this new provision of the CARES Act, Section 3610.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that. And in terms of how is it a tool in the toolbox to have your federal government contract staff paid in a state of readiness? What's the option there?
So, and our government contracts team here at Barron Zweig Leonard has been like staying on top of this like no other. In fact, I was in touch with Stephanie Wilson, Terry O'Connor, the 2 co-directors of our government contracts practice this morning. And one of the questions that our clients have asked is, okay, can we do both? Can we do the 3610 program as well as do the Paycheck Protection Program, the PPP? And it's been a source of confusion for a lot of our clients.
And just to fill in, the 3610 program is the program where the contractor has the ability to coordinate with the contracting officer and to have the CO turn on an independent stream of money to pay for the employee staff to stay at home in a state of readiness when they're unable, through no fault of their own, to go into a federal facility because of a temporary lockdown. And it's the kind of work like satellite support that they are unable to perform from their house.
That's right. Both of them are really, at the end of the day, payroll relief for government contractors.
Another option.
And so the question was, well, if I'm looking to take advantage of this 3610 program specifically for government contractors, why would I do the PPP too? And so we've had clients say this, because the natural reaction is, am I double dipping? And the question, and the answer really is this: the Paycheck Protection Program really only lasts for 8 weeks. This 3610 goes all the way through September. And so what we've advised our clients is, apply for the paycheck protection program, because first off, there's a little bit of question mark about, getting those money in hand anyways. So do it. It could always be repaid, because keep in mind, it is a loan. If you choose ultimately not to use it 75%, I guess is what the baseline is for payroll, then you can always repay it and then go under the 3610. Don't put all your eggs in one basket at this time. I think that's the wise approach.
Todd, next question.
Okay, we've got an HR question from Ryan. How do I hold on to my workforce if I am unable to get any PPP funds?
This is a question that I am hearing a lot from clients, and so I'll start with this one because this is where you have to be a little bit creative. We talked about the leave laws that came out 2 weeks ago. I predicted at that time that the leave laws were going to be perhaps a little bit less relevant in the DC region, just because the caps that they have of $200 per day for most of it is really going to be tough for a lot of families to say, why don't I just try to do as much as I can to soldier on? Companies want to keep their employees on their staff. They want to keep connected. So there's a couple of different things. I had a client that came up with a creative solution the other day to do a PTO donation program in order for some employees who have a lot of PTO who don't need it to donate it to other employees within the organization that might need it for childcare and things of that. So that's a great aspect. That's a great creative thing. And the other thing I would point out is this: underemployment. If you want to keep your employees employed half the time, let's say you have enough work for them half the time, put them on underemployment. Tell them, go file for unemployment. And by the way, right now, the federal, we talked about this, the supercharged unemployment, they're putting in $600 per week for employees. And right now, there is not a provision under the federal program to prorate that. So if you're underemployed, meaning you're working, let's say 50%, and you go get 50% of state unemployment, right now, it has not been changed. The feds are still putting in the full $600. So that's one way to keep your staff employed.
Ian, let me ask you a related question. How does a company keep the sales team intact if operating funds are running dry? I mean, that's got to be a problem that is going to be increasingly laying on the pressure over the coming weeks.
Well, and the thing is that oftentimes the people in those sales roles are the ones who are your connection to revenue. So if you cut that off, it's almost like you're cutting off your oxygen supply. Where I've actually seen organizations right now investing is actually developing their skills and working on new marketing strategies and things that they had put off in the past because they didn't have time. They're focused on that. If they're actually in a situation where they can't pay people, look, they may have people who are commission only. There may be different ways to approach it. Of course, I'll defer to the two of you on the legal side. I've had clients of mine who said, oh, we had to lay people off, and their employees said, oh, I'll work for free. Well, I don't think we can let them do that. I'm pretty sure we outlawed slavery in this country, so that's probably not cool to do. But to make it so it's more incentive-based, there may be different ways to structure that. I'd defer to the two of you on that.
Yeah. Take that. And this is really where the employment contract comes into play, because every company is different. Every relationship is different. People might be working on a draw against commissions. It really depends. I think that it's the time for managers to take a look at some of those contracts and to understand how to plug that in. The last thing that the company wants to do is to inherit some kind of a contract dispute. But ultimately, going and rising above that and maintaining a high level of communication is going to be one of the most important things right now. We are encouraging our clients to really just tee up daily conversations and having a very transparent and candid conversation with people as much as possible from a cash flow standpoint. Because at this point, let's just face the reality of it. We might get some PPP in the door. The SBA may get additional funds. I think those funds are going to dry up in a week or two. The senators are fighting on the floor. We have to be self-reliant, and one of the keys to that is to maintain a level of direct communication and letting your employees know. Because I'll tell you, and Declan, I'm sure that you'll attest to this, one of the main things that that our CEO clients are talking about is everything that they can do to try to keep their work staff paid and going on. That's concern number one. They're worried about their people. They're worried about their team.
That's right. Sometimes to the detriment of their cash flow.
Right.
I mean, I've had to have some hard discussions with executives where they say we're just going to start putting them on paid leave, even though we don't have work to keep them going. And I've had to have some hard discussions to say, listen, your heart is in the right place. I said this in the last Facebook Live event. Your heart is in the right place, but you have another obligation to your workforce, which is when we get whatever an all clear is going to look like here, hopefully sooner than later, when we get an all clear, companies and management owe it to their employees to be able to gear back up as quick as possible. I mean, this is a time of turmoil, but we really want some kind of semblance of reality, as the dust settles on all of this and people are able to come back to work.
Well, and one of the things to think about is that as much as we talk about the PPP program, we talk about the different programs that the government's putting in place to help people. Ultimately, coming out of this, what you have to ask yourself is, if you get to that point where now we resume some sense of normalcy, are you in a position to thrive and really grow your business, or are you behind the rest of the industry because you didn't take action? So it's very challenging because we have to pivot. There's a local restaurant in the Tyson's Corner area in Vienna called Clarity, and Clarity once they all of a sudden had this situation, they started doing family style curbside pickup. And before anyone else was thinking about it. And then it was, oh, hey, if you need to get, if you like our product, they have, great quality meats and things like that. Huh. Hey, we'll sell those to you. And curbside delivery, and our wait staff can actually deliver it to you, and just different things that they were doing.
Yeah, they became grocery stores. I mean, it's amazing.
And all of a sudden now,
turning on a dime.
Yeah, their business is thriving. Now, what it's also done is it's made it so that now they have a way for people to order online. They didn't before, but they pivoted their business and really innovated. And I think in a lot of businesses, what I see is, once again, it's two sides. One side says, oh, what we used to do has been devastated. There's nothing I can do. I'm going to sit in the corner and lick my wounds.
Yeah, throw in the towel.
Yeah. And the other side says, wow, here's an opportunity for us to pivot and really take on this new area that we hadn't done before. And kind of, we had to do this, but now it's forced us to innovate, and it's creating huge opportunities.
And I love that. Yeah. Strength and resiliency. Yeah. Lean forward into it.
And the word, it all boils down to connection. You want to stay connected to your clients. Right. And that's what a great restaurant like Clarity is doing, staying connected. They're not able to do the same thing they always have, where people are sitting at tables and enjoying it. But you know what? They're still staying connected. They're still staying relevant.
And with their staff, too.
You also want to stay connected to your employees. Yeah. And one word, the employment lawyer in me always has to come out. One word of advice, though. If you do put your people, if you are forced to do a temporary layoff, a furlough, and your people end up having to go on unemployment, it is absolutely fine to stay in touch with them on a human level. Check in with them every once in a while. How are you doing? How's your family doing? How are you coping? Just be careful not to blur the lines and start saying, oh, and about the Penske file, where do we go with the Penske file? Because if you start to do that, you're really starting to put them, you're complicating things because you're putting them back on in work mode, and that can mess up their unemployment claim.
Shout out to Chef John at Clarity. I must confess, I've had 1 or 2 bottles of wine over there.
Yeah. And also George Costanza from Seinfeld. So.
Yes, exactly.
Vandalay Industries.
Yeah,
Vandalay. All right. And on that note,
okay, this is for Ian, and this is for an individual salesperson. Now that I can't meet sales leads for breakfast or lunch, how can I build new leads not yet in my pipeline, given the fact that I'm now stuck at home under quarantine?
So one of the best things is to reach out to your existing clients. And the way we want to do that is think about what kind of problem we solve for them. And if you don't know, you can ask. You can reach out to them and say, first, with empathy, how are you? How's your family? How are you coping with all this? Listen, I know that this is the product you bought from us, the service you bought from us. What was the big problem that you were looking for us to address with that? How well did we do in addressing it? And then you get to say, can you think of 1 or 2 other people you know who right now might be in that same position? Because then they're going to be able to say, well, yeah, I wouldn't call this person, I wouldn't call that person, because those 2 people, you know what, they're knee deep in PPP and can't figure out what's going on. But these other people, wow, they're really in a good place.
And I think we have a propensity in the business world as we're providing services. I think we have this propensity to pigeonhole ourselves. We say we do X. This is what we do. I mean, let's face it, Seth. We've had to really become, I won't say experts, but really, really get in depth into the SBA regulation, lending process. I mean, that's not something that our clients turn to us before. Unemployment. I'm an employment lawyer, but generally unemployment. I've advised clients on that before, but generally that's kind of a side issue. We've had to pivot a little bit ourselves and say, you know what issues do our businesses most need from us right now? And that's what we've done.
Well, I think that both of you are raising an interesting point because, when you're sailing a ship through a storm, you're going to have to take an unexpected turn. And part of doing that is teeing up a different approach to make sure that you're there for your customers and your clients. And, I wasn't necessarily studying 30 days ago new business regulations by the Small Business Administration. But now you and I are talking about Section 3610 like it's rolling off the top. And I think Ian's point is key. Where can we help? I was on a phone call with the CEO yesterday, and I just opened up with a question that really struck him, and it was just simply, how are you doing? And we actually had just a person-to-person human conversation for a few minutes, and we talked about his family. And listen, a lot of this is common sense, but people are really going through a lot of stress right now. And Ian, I would imagine that managing a sales staff is going to be tough because on the one hand, people need to meet their numbers and be able to keep the pipeline going, but you're also managing a staff that's remote and stressed out. So I'm sure you're getting a few questions on that front.
Well, absolutely. And here's the funny part. So when all this first started, I reached out to some of my clients and I said, well, so some of these programs that we've started put in place in terms of developing their skills and role play and things like that, do you want to put those on hold? And they said, no, what are you kidding? Now the people on our team, they're working from home. They're saving themselves an hour and a half a day in commuting. They're not in airports. They're not in hotels. They have time to build these skills because coming out of this, we want to really see what we can do and how we can seize this opportunity. And so that was the first client, really surprised me. And then I had conversation after conversation with other organizations where they basically said the same thing. Now, I also run into businesses that say, oh, with this going on, we're just going to sit here and do nothing. So, and I understand both perspectives, but if you had to predict 6 months from now, which of those businesses is going to be in a better position, it's probably going to be the ones who are seizing the opportunity to develop their skills, develop their teams, and focus on innovation rather than the people who are kind of, licking their wounds and sitting in the corner.
Yeah, we complain all year when we're busy, sort of running around with our hair on fire. We complain so much, and there's so much, I don't have time to reach out to X, or I don't have time to reach out to Y. Now we actually have that time. I mean, and honestly, for them to hear, I've been doing a lot of this, reaching out to clients, because I consider my clients, my friends in a lot of ways in terms of having represented them for so many years. And that's something, here at the firm, we really pride ourselves on. We always say, listen, if we don't know your business and we don't know you, we really can't be a trusted advisor to you. So this has been a time where I've reached out to them, not to say, how can I get billable work from you? I'm busy enough. We're all busy enough. But how are you doing? How are you surviving? And can I throw you a morsel of business advice that I've gotten some emails from clients where I can almost read the tears coming through in these emails because there is such desperation and hopelessness. I immediately jump on that call and I say, hey guys, hey executives, I have some hope for you. This is a tough time. I'm not here to sell snake oil or anything like that, but I actually do have some hope because, and again, I hope I don't eat my words, I do believe that the federal government has set up a program, along with the state governments, to really provide a good lifeline for companies to get through this.
Yeah, and the thing that makes it so difficult from a practical standpoint is that people at home have their televisions on. And when you turn on the television, you see that, it is what it is. You see the numbers of people who are sick, the people who are passing away. How do you stay focused in a time like this? It's absolutely crucial to try to find a way to move forward. And, it's hard for me to work from home.
What was the thing we saw the other day? We have TVs here in the office. And honestly, I'm going to change them over to like House Hunters or something because because what was it? It was Death Peak Day or something.
Peak Death Week.
Yeah. And listen, this is very real.
Come on.
We recognize it. but we just don't know whether or not that's the most productive thing for people to fixate on at this time. Like, like try to soldier on as best you can. As Ian said, it's the companies that are looking to plow through. It's not going to be at 100%. We know that, but it's the companies that are looking to plow through that really are going to really be best positioned when we get whatever all clear looks like, and hopefully it's sooner than later.
Sure. And if you have to work from home, just try to stay focused because, turning on the television right now is very, very difficult. Although, it seems like we do have some good news that's going to be around the corner, and we have to stay optimistic. And in the meantime, take care of your customers and take care of your loved ones.
No doubt. We got another
Todd,
question?
we're going to jump over to the
question from Jeremy, and he says about the various programs that we've been talking about involving loans and grants. It's a significant amount of money. What concerns should businesses who take these loans have about oversight or other controls that are placed on the use of these funds?
Oh, well, I mean, I think SBA is already doing that. And I think banks, I think that's why there is a delay right now. I mean, the banks are sort of in the crosshairs right now. But I have sympathy for them. We mentioned our good friend Tim Funkhauser last time over at BB&T. I mean, they are grappling with how do we handle this? How do we dole out $350 billion and create some kind of oversight? So the SBA has already done that. They've put out some regulations saying 75% should be used for payroll, 25% can be used for the other categories such as interest on loans, utilities, rent, things of those, critical things to operate a business. So there already is a sort of a built-in mechanism, but it's going to be important because when the dust settles, they're going to be looking at this. Right now, it's a little bit of shoot first, ask questions later in terms of getting this money out. When the dust settles, they are going to want accountability, I believe.
Keep your records. It's not because we're trying to be stuffy librarians. It's because you got to work with your accountant or your CPA and show, I don't have to pay this back. This is a grant because I used it for, allowable interest, salary, rent, and then you're going to be able to just turn it into a grant. Todd, next question.
This is another question along the PPP loans. Can they be used only forward-looking, meaning to cover payroll that happens after the loan is received, or can it be used to cover employees who have been on leave without pay over the last several weeks?
Well, I think that's a great question. All these questions every week are great. The purpose of the Paycheck Protection Program is to keep you solvent and to maintain your payroll presently and moving forward. However, it also has a look-back provision so that within the last few weeks, if you had to let somebody go and, for example, put them on a temporary reprieve and to put them on furlough so that they get benefits through their state-based unemployment commission benefits, then there is a presumption and an encouragement under the Act that you're going to bring those recently removed people back onto the payroll. Declan, does that sound right to you?
I have some advice for this questioner. I would encourage those employees. I think, Todd, you said they were on leave without pay. Nobody right now should ever, ever, ever be on leave without pay. The federal government has created this lifeline, and frankly, a pretty potent lifeline, at least to put almost $1,000, depending state by state. That money is going to vary, but almost $1,000 in somebody who's not otherwise getting a paycheck. So what I would encourage is, I agree with Seth. I think it's got to be forward looking for the next 8 weeks. And I would not mess with doing retroactive stuff because you're going to have issues with accountability and the regulations are already going to be tough enough to make sure that we all adhere to. So I would encourage those people to go to unemployment and for the period of time that they were on leave without pay to apply for unemployment.
Ian, I've spoken to a lot of CEOs and their main concern right now is just a complete lack of information. They feel so frustrated because they're just trying to all run into the end zone for the same money. What are you hearing from your CEO clients in terms of how they're dealing with all these pressures, and what are you hearing in terms of their concern about being able to keep their top people from a sales perspective?
Well, one of the things to keep in mind is that most entrepreneurs and business leaders take a great deal of pride in when they hire people. There's nothing greater than, as an entrepreneur, when you see somebody who buys a house, they get married, they have kids, they're buying cars, they're doing all this stuff, and you feel some sense of responsibility like, hey, I created an environment that facilitated that and made it possible. And similarly, one of the most challenging times for an entrepreneur who cares about their people is if they have to let somebody go, especially under these circumstances. So what I'm hearing from a lot of those people is this kind of heavy heart that they have that says, man, I guess laying this person off is best for them financially. I just hope that we can get them back. I hope that we can get these resources from the government so I don't have to do this. And it's the people who see the opportunity. Those are the ones that really impress me because they say, if I can get these funds from PPP, even though I don't have this work from clients that's billable, I do have things that I can have people work on that will be innovative, that will position us well coming out of this. And in that context, it could actually help launch the recovery much faster because people will be poised to seize the opportunity.
Yeah, and it's a great point, Ian. It underscores, there's many different leadership styles, but people talk about, strong, charismatic leaders at the top of a company versus maybe what you would call servant leaders. I know, the Good to Great book that many of us, have adhered to, and Jim Collins, he talks more about companies being more successful when they have servant leaders who act as stewards for a company more so than just the grandiose look at me. Oh, I'm the great one at the company. And I think those servant leaders are the ones that are going to be thriving during this time period.
They're the new stars. Yeah.
They're going to be looking at how do I protect my workforce, and you know what, and the employees will see that, and the employees will appreciate that.
One quick thing before we go to the next question. Interesting how Ian, what you're saying, and Declan, what you're saying, sometimes operate in parallel and sometimes intersect, because if there are people in that sales organization that you want to hold on to, but you just can't keep them on payroll, Declan, your point is that's fine. Be aware of the new provisions that have been passed by Congress. You can have them on a temporary furlough. They're going to be in a state of readiness so that you can bring them back over the next couple of months when you're ready to turn the lights back on.
Avoid the word termination. It's a word I always find, even in my regular employment practice, I always find it so sort of like it's just a harsh word, and in this case, it's definitely not. I usually use the word separation, but it's definitely not intended to be harsh or permanent or final.
Congress uses the word furlough.
It's a furlough or a temporary layoff. Yep.
Sure. I think that if you've got a top sales performer and you say to them, look, here's our situation from a revenue standpoint. When I look at these numbers, I believe that if we furlough you, you'll end up being better off financially during this period. And then we can bring you back and you have that conversation. Then they know it's not, oh, we think you're awful. It's, hey, I'm troubled making this decision because it might mean that you won't come back, but I believe this is in your best interest if I do it this way. Are you seeing it differently than I am? And now you're having a conversation with someone who says, wow, this individual actually put me ahead of their own priorities.
Yes.
And work through it from that perspective.
It will be a big test with how leaders have acted up until this point. This is always a big test because if you try what Ian just suggested, and yet up until this day,
you're used to being self-sufficient, exactly.
But up until this day, you've been like produce, quota,
right.
And that is important. But if you've been only a one-trick pony with your sales staff and said quota,
right,
you're not going to have enough of the credibility, I think, in these tough times.
Well, and I think we also have to keep in mind that this is what Congress intended. This is a 2 to 3 month emergency safety net. That's exactly what Congress wants us to do.
Yep.
So that's what you need to be aware of. Todd, let's jump to the next question.
Okay, we've got a question from Cal, who runs a small business over in Falls Church. And unfortunately, the business has been hit really hard by this pandemic and had to lay off a number of employees. And obviously, he's told them to take advantage of unemployment. And I've heard this from other business owners as well, that now the employees are saying that they can't get through to the unemployment commission because of the backlog. Anything the owner can do to help.
Wow.
I mean, when you go through unemployment, there is an aspect where the owner has to come in and help fill out paperwork. But I suspect what we're really talking about is just getting through and starting that process in the beginning. We talked about the PPP and people not being able to get online. There are some banks that still don't let their longtime loyal customers submit an application. So for unemployment, you know what it is? It's not used to handling this. We've prided ourselves on such low, 3% unemployment, and now all of a sudden we've jumped way up. They just can't handle it. My advice is patience hang in there. If the company wants to do a PTO payout, they certainly can try that. I've certainly preached
Bridge the gap.
I've certainly preached be cash in a cash preservation mode.
Right, and I think that also, if you have any resources, including anyone who is an assistant HR manager or even anybody who may not exactly have traditionally been in that role but has some administrative capacity, let them be available to do a direct connect with the employees and try to help them through that process.
Yes.
But we hear you loud and clear on that. You know, I'm looking on the news and I see people frustrated, literally waiting in line to have to submit a paper application, and they're terrified because of the whole requirement of social distancing.
Yeah, your rent's due, your car payments due, your utilities are due, and yet you're going through this frustrating online system.
Very frustrating.
It is an issue. I will say, though, this too will pass in terms of being able to get on these systems. And so I would encourage just persistence and, to the extent you can, patience. And I think even your creditors have some patience in this time frame.
Yeah, and I think the extent that you can show that empathy that says, look, we understand what you're going through, and communicate to the rest of your team, here's what we've done. We furloughed some people so they can take advantage of this program. And hopefully when this all corrects itself, we'll be able to bring those people back on and be in a position to do that. Here's what we're doing in terms of our HR resources to help those people. We just want everyone to know, because I'm sure everyone's as concerned as we are. Then it shows the other employees that you're actually placing a priority on taking care of each other, not just focus on the profits.
And by the way, there is one other aspect that we should probably touch on. For the PPP program, if you do get those funds in your account, and let's hope it's
quick,
any day now for most companies around here, because we got payroll right around the corner.
Yep.
If you do get those funds, that is supposed to be an incentive to bring people that you previously furloughed or temporarily laid off back into the fold. Even if you don't have work for them, the government's paying them through this mechanism versus unemployment.
And let your employees know. If you feel comfortable with that as the business owner, let them know that you're going to be here to help them with unemployment. But in the meantime, you've applied to PPP, you're dealing with your banker, and we're all on the same team. Exactly. Todd, next question, please.
Okay, this comes to us from David. This one's a bit of a head scratcher.
Seth, you take this one.
Thanks, guys.
Rochambeau. All right, Seth.
For employees working from home, if someone gets injured, can they make a workers' compensation claim for an injury working?
Wow. I'll tell you, we have some very detailed-oriented audience.
By the way, this has been an issue.
It's a legitimate question. It's 100%.
This has been an issue for companies as more and more companies have gone remote and teleworking. This has been an issue. Now, workers' comp is governed by insurance. It is an insurance policy. It's state by state also. So you really do have to look at the particular policy. Listen, if you go to the kitchen to make lunch and you slip on an ice cube that fell out of the
or you trip over your dog.
Yeah, or you trip over your dog.
Right.
Those are not foreseeable. The context of workers' comp is it wasn't foreseeable that it would happen in the workplace.
And it has to arise out of and during the course of employment.
Yes.
So if you're making yourself a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and you slip over Trixie the cat, then that's one thing.
It's not going to be that. Exactly.
Todd's laughing.
I hate to say it, but the one you always think of for workers' comp is, the forklift accident, things of those things where it is foreseeable that there could be, a pallet falling off of a forklift. I mean, I know that that's not really relevant to a lot of our clients, but that's why, when you look at the workplace, you have to say, okay, is it somewhat related to what they would normally have done in the workplace?
And if it is, then it could be a legitimate claim. And by the way, companies, beware. Stay on top of your premiums. Stay on top of your premiums because that's going to be important too. Todd,
I have one question to add on this, which is, how do we know Todd's not just making up that question? Because that seemed like one Todd.
A little bit convenient.
Left field.
Yes. He has been complaining about his chair at home that he's been doing some work in and stuff. Yeah, but that is a good. That's probably the only one that I could see foreseeable is if somebody is working in the office and has to now telework, and they have normally had sort of one of those ergonomic chairs, and they're working from their kitchen table, which a lot of us have been doing that, working in a spare bedroom or whatever. Where back injuries and ergonomic injuries are very, very real.
Absolutely.
That would be an example where you really should engage in a dialogue. Yeah. I think workers' comp claims emanating from most home things are not going to be an issue under workers' comp.
Todd, next question,
well,
please.
Along HR lines here, this comes from Victor, and it says, if I am not receiving PPP loans yet, and I have to lay someone off so they can get unemployment, they lose their health insurance, correct? Or and if so, what can he do to help employees keep their health insurance?
Great question.
You can keep people under the furlough process. You can keep people tethered to the company by providing them with benefits. Really, unemployment only comes into play when it comes to just that paycheck. And so you can keep people tethered. Now, I say that there's always going to be a nuance for everything. Some health providers are going to say, look, we're only going to allow this for a certain period of time because they are giving you the benefits of economies of scale by keeping you on a company's insurance plan.
Right.
But I've seen many situations with my clients where they say, listen, for the next 2 months, probably you're going to be on unemployment, but I will keep you on health insurance. In order to, and by the way, that helps the connectivity with the employee. You no longer have just, sort of cut the cord.
And life goes on. I mean, you let's say that you have part of your workforce where someone lets you know that that they are pregnant. Under a lot of short-term disability policies, that employee is also able to go on STD leave and still get benefits, although now that's going to be under a different mechanism, because the other thing that they could do if they wanted to, and that would be a conversation with management, is they may just want to go ahead and roll over into a temporary furlough, because with the new congressional $600 a day benefit, they may get more benefits through that than having maybe a 60 or 65% benefit for their traditional base salary under the insurance policy.
And Ian, when for some of your clients that you're talking to, how are they talking about maintaining that connectivity, whether it's through ongoing benefits, however else they're doing that?
Well, a lot of it is, it comes down to, if the people are still employed, to your point earlier, it's making sure that we're actually, if we furloughed them, I can't really ask them about business things. If, on the other hand, it's someone who's still employed, they're having regular meetings via Zoom. And here's one of the skills that people are starting to pick up on. You can't have a 2-hour meeting on Zoom and have it be productive. Here's a spoiler alert. You couldn't have a 2-hour in-person meeting and have it be productive either. Okay?
Unless you're really charming.
But we used to do it all the time. And so now people are getting more efficient and realizing, you know what? I don't need to have a meeting where I can read people stuff that they could have read themselves. Instead, I'm going to communicate key piece of information. When it comes to sales opportunities, instead of people wasting time saying, oh, well, tell me about what's going on with this account, you can send that an update, and then the conversation becomes, where do you need our help? Where are you running into problems in this area, that area? That way they can actually take action and do something with it. So that level of maintaining connectivity with people is about being more productive. In fact, here's a tip for people. In one of my favorite books, a woman named Neen James wrote a book called Attention Pays. And I had Neen on my podcast, and Neen said one of her tips is, on a Post-it note each day, write down the 3 things that you're going to do each day that are non-negotiable. Here are the 3 things I'm going to accomplish each day. And you're not going to sleep. You're not ending the day until you've accomplished those 3 things. It sounds simple, but I will tell you that when I have the discipline to do that, I'm way more productive, because it's just that feeling of checking off those 3 things on the list really help you accomplish something.
And not only do I like the fact that you limit it to, 3 things, because I think people obviously try to bite off way more than they can chew on a daily basis. I love the fact that she adopts Post-it notes, because as anyone knows, I've had an addiction to Post-it notes for many, many years now. If you go to my office is littered by them. People tell me you can actually put notes in your phone. I don't believe them. I think it's all about the Post-it notes. And I'm a traditionalist. Those light yellow ones. My wife needed Post-it notes yesterday. She wanted these bright pink ones. I said, no, it's got to be light yellow.
Well, and Declan, let me just point out that I actually asked Neen about this. I said, well, what if I just put it as to-do items on my calendar? She says, look, in her research, the Post-it note ends up being way more effective. Now, I suppose we could genericize it and call it a sticky note. I don't believe that 3M is shipping all the Post-it notes overseas. I believe they're providing an endless supply domestically as well.
But there is something very satisfying to taking that Post-it note and crumbling it up and throwing it away, which you can't necessarily do when you have a broader calendar.
Well, anyone that's walked into Declan's office knows that it looks kind of like a scene out of a battle movie with an explosion of Post-it note bombs all over the place.
Whatever works.
Whatever works. Whatever works.
I love that, Declan, because you make me feel better about my office.
We'll talk. Yeah, that's a whole other story.
Okay,
let's jump to the next.
We've got a GovCon question from a GovCon. Says his government customer has allowed the workforce to switch to telework, and fortunately, they have not seen a change in operations. Does it still make sense to apply for a PPP loan, knowing that the funds are drying up quickly?
Well, I would say yes, because first of all,
it goes back to the 3610.
Yeah. I mean, you have a couple of options, and I think that you have the Section 3610 option to speak to your contracting officer. You have the PPP application that can you relate directly back to your bank. But if you find that you are approved for funds that ultimately it turns out that you don't need, you can always either pay them back or that you can decline the loan. But I think that if you believe that you are going to potentially be impacted by the COVID crisis, then you meet the criteria for submitting an application. So you don't have to apply for it, but you should strongly consider applying for it. As a practical matter, I think that you'll probably, if you haven't submitted it yet, it's going to be tight, but hopefully when the Senate gets back next week, they're going to be talking about replenishing that. So for our fellow CEOs and customers that are feeling that they're really very much left in the dark and very frustrated, tough to read the tea leaves, and there's a crack in our crystal ball, but it does look like it's going to get replenished.
And by the way, the Paycheck Protection Program, the PPP, it doesn't cover all operating expenses from a company. It's paycheck. It's the bare bones things to keep the lights on and to keep people employed, and it's for a short duration. And so the fact that you might have other avenues of income coming in, such as revenue from your government clients, again, you're not allowed to double dip when it comes to like the 3610 program.
But you can space it out.
Yeah, but don't think that like just because you're getting the PPP, businesses, it's all like, sort of magical that you're not going to have any financial crunch issues.
Pretty narrow. Todd, next question.
We probably have time for maybe one more.
One more here, and
Nice.
it's a great question for all three of you because as you know, once we return to whatever the new normal is going to be, and we see how everybody is getting creative and dealing with this crisis with so many different ways and dimensions. Can any predictions as impacting small businesses in particular, lessons learned, and maybe what the new normal may be?
Great question.
Yeah, I think businesses are going to look at things. I mean, look, we've been spoiled, particularly in the DC region, but perhaps in some respects, in many places nationwide, we've been spoiled with a very healthy economy. And we have not had to make these tough decisions for a long time. Listen, that doesn't mean businesses don't ebb and flow and you're making tough decisions, but this is of such a grander scale that I think it's going to cause all of us to kind of, I consider myself, and people who know me would probably, my family's probably nodding and if they're watching is nodding in agreement that I can be somewhat closed-minded about some of business decisions. Let's just say, working from home. We always pride ourselves, Seth, on our team environment. And to us, that always meant be here, be here, be here. We may have to reevaluate. We're always going to have this on-site presence, but we may have to reevaluate a little bit what it means to be a team, and does it always require physical presence? So I think it's going to cause all of us to question a little bit. Ian?
Yeah, I think that we're starting to figure out that there's things that we never thought we could do that we can do. So there are businesses that are going to determine that, we can have a portion of our workforce work remotely. We're also going to discover through this that we have some team members or some types of businesses that don't work well remotely. I don't think there's going to be a huge boom in remote plumbers. I don't think that's going to be a new thing where we're fixing our own pipes and there's someone on the phone going, oh, yeah, just turn that. Oh, it didn't work? All right, I got a bad connection. And then they disappear. But what we are starting to see is more people embrace distance learning, for example, and remote learning. We are seeing people use some of the more advanced features of Zoom. It's funny. I've been using Zoom for years. I never realized there was a breakout room capability. So you can create breakout rooms and put people into little groups together and then bring them back. People have become much more aware of Zoom security lately. But fundamentally, what we realize is that our teams can actually learn at their own pace. So if we provide an environment for them to learn things and develop their skills, they'll seize that opportunity and take those on.
Wrap us up.
Great points. Well, I believe that, and I predict that the lights are going to slowly be turning back on for our economy here regionally in the Washington metropolitan area and gradually across the country. And that as the lights come back on in the early part of this summer, and we start to see a gradual receding on a real beneficial, very positive payback for all of the incredible sacrifices that everybody's making with social distancing, that the businesses that are going to survive are the ones that are going to be the most vigilant and the most creative right now. I think that the more that they stay connected to their advisors and the more that they stay open and creative and leaning forward and owning this right now, those are going to be the ones that are going to be able to turn the lights fully back on. And I think Ian raised a really interesting point earlier in saying that you've got to be able to be creative and think about what does the customer need and where do you need to go. And in Declan, it reminds me of something that you said too in terms of the flexible thinking, and that, you know, you may not have been an SBA reg specialist, but you've got to go in and be ready to tee things up. So we are going to be turning the corner and things are going to change. But one of the things that we're here to do is to just try to help navigate through this. So I would like to thank everybody for joining us in Facebook Live today. I'd like to thank our special guest, Ian Altman. You might want to check out SameSideSellingAcademy.com. He's been very gracious and being here with us and talking about that. Thank you, Ian. And thanks to everybody for joining us. Stay safe, and we'll see you next time.